Welcome to another FAR walkthrough video. I'm Logan, and in today's video, we're going to be going over the purpose and objectives of the Statement of Financial Position. And we're going to be doing that the SuperfastCPA CPA way, which is diving straight into questions to learn the material. Now, if you don't know much about our strategies, make sure you go to SuperfastCPA.com and check out our free 1-hour webinar training. We go over the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam. And again, it's only 1 hour, it's free, and we will show you how to be effective and efficient with your study process. Also, just letting you know, we will only be going over 4 questions in today's video, and typically I also make a member version of the video that has additional questions, but this topic is so straightforward and so small on the blueprints that we're only going to be going over 4 questions, and that's the full YouTube video and the full member video. So just letting you know. With all that said, let's dive straight into the questions. All right, here we are at question 1. What components are typically covered in the Statement of Financial Position for a non-governmental, not-for-profit entity? So we learned something right there. The Statement of Financial Position is for a non-governmental, not-for-profit entity, so that's what we're going to be talking about in this video and for the next few videos, is not-for-profit entities. But what is the Statement of Financial Position? If you don't know, that's okay. We're just going to dive straight into the answer to kind of get an understanding of what this is. All right, and the answer is B, assets, liabilities, and net assets. So a little bit different than what you might have been thinking, like if you thought of a balance sheet. So let's walk through this. The Statement of Financial Position for a non-governmental, not-for-profit entity typically covers 3 main components: assets, liabilities, and net assets. The assets, like we know, are resources owned by the organization, such as cash, receivables, and property that are expected to provide future economic benefits. The liabilities are obligations the organization owes to others, including accounts payable, accrued expenses, and long-term debt. Again, that's kind of stuff that you definitely already know. But the thing that you might not know much about is net assets. This is the residual interest in the assets of the entity after liabilities have been deducted. Unlike for-profit entities that use the term equity or shareholders' equity, not-for-profit entities refer to this section as net assets. So basically, this is a balance sheet for a not-for-profit entity, and it's just assets, liabilities, and net assets is the equity type portion of the Statement of Financial Position. So that's just kind of a brief intro. Let's go to the next question. All right, here we are at question 2, and this is pretty much the purpose of this topic in the blueprint. What is the primary purpose of the Statement of Financial Position for a non-governmental, not-for-profit entity? So what is the point of the Statement of Financial Position? It's pretty straightforward after doing the first question, so you could probably figure out what it is just based off what we learned from the previous question. But if you want, go ahead and pause the video and kind of think about it. If not, that's okay. We're just going to dive straight in. All right, and the answer is C, to present the financial health of the entity by showing its assets, liabilities, and net assets at a specific point in time. So again, very similar to a balance sheet. The Statement of Financial Position for a non-governmental, not-for-profit entity is similar to a balance sheet in a for-profit organization. Its primary purpose is to provide a snapshot of the entity's financial health at a specific moment by detailing its assets, liabilities, and net assets, which again, that's basically the equity. This information is crucial for stakeholders, including donors, grantors, and board members, as it allows them to assess the financial stability and resource allocation of the organization. Unlike for-profit entities, the Statement of Financial Position for a not-profit does not focus on profit generation, but rather on the organization's ability to sustain its mission and manage its resources effectively. So basically, instead of saying, look, this is how well we're doing, this is how much money we're making, the Statement of Financial Position is kind of just showing, hey, we're accomplishing our mission, this is what we're using our funds and doing with our assets and liabilities. So a little bit different focus, but that's the purpose, is basically just to let people know, like a balance sheet, how the company is doing, what the health of the company looks like. Let's go to the next question. All right, here we are at question 3. Which of the following would typically be included in the net assets section of the Statement of Financial Position for a non-governmental, not-for-profit entity? So we've talked a little bit about what is in the Statement of Financial Position and what its purpose is, and we've talked about net assets, but what is included in net assets? It's not really like the equity of a normal for-profit business. So which one of these is going to be included there? It's probably pretty easy to tell, because liabilities, that's not going to be part of net assets. Accounts receivable and cash equivalents, that's going to be part of assets. And prepaid expenses and deferred revenues, those are going to be part of assets and liabilities. So pretty easy to see that it's B, unrestricted donations and investments held in perpetuity. So let's go to the answer to kind of learn a little bit more about net assets in general for the Statement of Financial Position. Okay, the answer, again, as we know, is B, unrestricted donations and investments held in perpetuity. And we're going to dive more into it in the next video, by the way. We're going to actually talk about preparing a Statement of Financial Position. Again, the point of this topic was just to let you know what the point and the purpose of the statement of financial position is, and I just wanted to give a brief intro into what net assets has in it. The net assets section of the statement of financial position for a non-governmental not-for-profit entity represents the residual interest in the organization's assets after liabilities have been deducted, and the net assets typically are categorized into two main groups. So these are the two main groups. First, there's without donor restrictions. This includes resources that are not subject to donor-imposed restrictions and can be used at the discretion of the organization. Unrestricted donations fall into this category. So basically, money and things that you can use without it having a restriction, that's part of the without donor restrictions in net assets. And then there's with donor restrictions. This includes resources that are subject to donor imposed restrictions, and that would include things like temporary restrictions or permanent restrictions. The temporary restrictions are resources restricted for specific purposes or time periods. Once the restriction is met, so once the whole point, the time period is met, these funds may be reclassified as without donor restrictions, because now that they've met that purpose, they can now be reclassified. And the permanent restrictions, these are endowments where the principal amount must be maintained in perpetuity, but the income generated can be used according to the donor's stipulations. And we're going to dive into all of that stuff in future videos because we're going to get more into the calculations and the preparation. I just wanted to give you a brief overview or brief introduction to what's in the net assets for this question. Basically, it's the resources that the company has after the liabilities are taken into account, but some of them are restricted and some are not restricted. And again, we're going to dive more into that in future videos. So that's what net assets has in it. Let's go to the next question. Okay, here we are at question 4. And this is the last question for this video, just a reminder. In the statement of financial position for a non-governmental not-for-profit entity, how are the components typically ordered and what are the major parts included under each component? Now, this is a pretty easy question as well. Pretty straightforward because you have to think of it as this is pretty much a balance sheet. It's just slightly different with the net assets. So if you want, pause the video if you need to think through this. I think you could do it based off what we've talked about. And when you're ready, come back, we'll look at it together. Okay, the answer is B. It's typically in the order of assets, liabilities, and net assets. And then in each of those, the assets has current and non-current assets, liabilities has current and non-current liabilities, and then net assets, we just learned about this, has without donor and with donor restrictions. So again, pretty easy, pretty straightforward question because the whole point of this video was to give you a quick intro into the topic that we're about to dive into in the next videos, which is non-governmental, not-for-profit entities and their financial statements and how to calculate and prepare those. So the statement of financial position is just the balance sheet. It has current assets, non-current assets, then current liabilities and non-current liabilities, and then after that, the net assets, which is without donor and with donor restrictions. So just a very basic overview of what it looks like, and in future videos we will kind of learn how to prepare that. And that's pretty much it. Those are just the 4 questions that I wanted to go over today. Before we finish out the video, I want to do one more part of the SuperFast CPA process, which is called pillar topics. Now, the idea behind pillar topics is as you're going through the questions to learn the material, you will notice the things that keep popping up. You see multiple questions trying to teach you what net assets are, or what goes into net assets, or what the purpose is of the statement of financial position. You'll see these things keep popping up, and you'll know that these are the pillar or the key topics that you need to know. So you take a second and you write them down so you know them for later. So let's look at the pillar topics for this video before we finish up. Okay, here we are at the pillar topics. And remember, this is kind of a summary, kind of the key points. The statement of financial position for a non-governmental not-for-profit entity provides a snapshot of the organization's financial health by showing its assets, liabilities, and net assets at a specific point in time. The statement of financial position typically presents components in the order of assets, liabilities, and net assets, ensuring clarity in assessing financial stability. Basically, again, just a balance sheet with net assets instead of equity. In a not-for-profit entity, the term net assets is used instead of equity. I just said that to represent the ownership interest in the organization's resources. And finally, net assets represent the residual interest in the entity's assets after liabilities are deducted and are categorized as either without donor restrictions or with donor restrictions. And again, we're going to dive deeper into those things in future videos. But that's pretty much the idea behind this topic, which was just giving you the purpose of the statement of financial position. Before we finish up the video, I just want to give you one more reminder about the SuperFast CPA training webinar on SuperfastCPA.com. We will teach you the key ingredients to passing the CPA exam, and again, it's only 1 hour. It is free, and we will show you how to pass the CPA exam without wasting time or even months or years. Also, just letting you know, typically these videos have a YouTube version and a member version. The member version has extra questions so that people can get more practice. This video specifically won't have that because it's such a straightforward topic, so I'm only going over 4 questions and that's it for this topic. But again, if you like this kind of format and you like the other videos that I make, just remember that SuperFast CPA members will have access to the full videos that typically have 10 questions if you become a SuperFast CPA member. If you like the video, make sure to like it and leave a comment, and I will see you in the next video.